The champagne glass felt cold against my palm as I watched my fiancée Lara stand before our wedding reception crowd. 300 of New England's finest had gathered in the Ocean View Hotel's grand ballroom, crystal chandeliers casting golden light across their expectant faces. I'd spent 18 months planning this moment, every detail orchestrated to perfection. "Ladies and gentlemen," Lara began, her voice carrying that practiced PR director tone I'd fallen for years ago. She wore the ivory Vera Wang dress we'd chosen together, her auburn hair swept into an elegant updo that showcased the diamond earrings I'd given her last Christmas. "I have something important to share with you all." My brother Drew shifted uncomfortably at the head table, his usual cocky smirk replaced by something I couldn't quite read. The guests leaned forward, expecting the traditional romantic speech newlyweds deliver at these gatherings. "I officially cancel the wedding," Lara announced, her words cutting through the ballroom like shattered glass. "I'm actually in love with his brother." The silence that followed was deafening. 300 faces turned toward me, waiting for my reaction. Some looked shocked, others embarrassed, a few seemed almost hungry for the drama unfolding before them. My future mother-in-law gasped audibly from table 6. I stood slowly, setting down my champagne flute with deliberate care. Years of working in tech startups had taught me to think quickly under pressure, to find opportunities in disasters. This moment would define how everyone in this room remembered Keaton Merren. "Thank you for your honesty, Lara," I said, my voice steady and clear. I walked to where she stood, gently took her left hand, and slid the 3-carat engagement ring from her finger. The Tiffany setting caught the light as I pocketed it. "I appreciate you sharing your true feelings with everyone here." Her green eyes widened, clearly expecting anger or pleading. Instead, I turned to address our guests. "Since we're all dressed up with nowhere to go, I'd like to invite everyone to continue the celebration at my penthouse. Consider it a party for new beginnings." I paused, letting my gaze sweep across the room. Well, almost everyone. I reached into my jacket and pulled out a manila folder I'd prepared weeks ago, not for this exact scenario, but for the business presentation I'd planned to give at the after-party. Sometimes preparation meets opportunity in unexpected ways. "Excuse me?" I called to Henri, the hotel's head maitre d'. "Could you please make an announcement? I have some materials to distribute." Henri approached with professional discretion, accepting the folder. Inside were printed documents I'd modified on my phone during Lara's speech, lease agreements for penthouse access, NDAs for my tech accelerator program, and guest badges with my name as sole host. "Ladies and gentlemen," Henri announced, "Mr. Merren has prepared a private after-party presentation. Please see the materials being distributed for details and access requirements." As hotel staff circulated the documents, I watched faces change. These weren't just party invitations, they were entry into an exclusive networking opportunity. My accelerator program had launched 3 successful startups in the past 2 years. In this crowd, that meant something. Lara grabbed my arm. "Keaton, what are you doing?" Exactly what I said, hosting a party. I gently removed her hand. "Unfortunately, the guest list is quite specific." Drew finally found his voice. "You can't just exclude us from my private residence? Actually, I can." I smiled at him, the same smile I'd used in countless business negotiations. The documentation being distributed includes exclusion clauses for conflicted parties. It's all perfectly legal. Sloan, Lara's best friend and Instagram influencer, appeared at our table. "This is ridiculous, Keaton. We've been planning this celebration for months." "And I appreciate all your help with the planning," I replied. "However, tonight's event has evolved into something different. A business opportunity, really." The crowd was buzzing now, reading through the materials. I'd structured everything as a legitimate business function: temporary use waivers for accessing my penthouse accelerator space, networking opportunities with established entrepreneurs, and pitch presentation slots for qualified attendees. Maddie, who worked with Lara at the PR firm, waved her copy of the documents. It says here this is a closed pitch night for your accelerator program? That's correct. I've been looking for new investment opportunities. I gestured toward the crowd. Tonight seems like perfect timing to meet with potential partners. Lara's face had gone pale. You're turning our wedding reception into a business meeting? I'm salvaging what I can from an unfortunate situation, I corrected. You made your choice clear. I'm making mine. The beauty of the moment wasn't lost on me. Lara had spent months bragging about the connections she'd bring to our marriage, her PR firm's client list, her family's social standing, her friends' influence in local media and business circles. She'd positioned herself as the gateway to New England's elite social scene. Now those same people were reading contracts to access my penthouse, eager to participate in what they perceived as an exclusive business opportunity. The power dynamic had shifted completely. This is insane, Drew muttered. You're humiliating us in front of everyone. I'm offering our guests an alternative to standing around an awkward reception, I said. Anyone who's uncomfortable with the situation is free to leave. Henri returned with a clipboard. Sir, we have 147 confirmations for the penthouse event. Shall I arrange transportation? Please coordinate with the hotel's concierge service. My building's address is on the documentation. I turned back to Lara and Drew. You'll find your names on the exclusion list, along with specific instructions for building security. The exclusion list was brilliant, if I do say so myself. By framing it as a business conflict of interest policy rather than personal vindictiveness, I'd made their rejection seem professional rather than petty. Lara's parents approached our table, her father's face red with embarrassment. Keaton, surely we can resolve this privately. I thought so too, Mr. Patterson. Unfortunately, your daughter chose a very public venue for her announcement. I straightened my tie. I'm simply responding in kind. As guests began filing out of the ballroom, many stopped to shake my hand or exchange business cards. The energy had completely transformed. What started as a wedding reception had become the most exclusive networking event of the year. Sloan tried one more approach. Keaton, please. We're all friends here. Friends don't usually conspire behind each other's backs, I replied, but I appreciate your concern. The truth was, I'd suspected something was developing between Lara and Drew for weeks. Late-night phone calls she claimed were work-related, weekend meetings that didn't appear on her calendar, the way they'd stopped making eye contact during family dinners. I'd hired a private investigator named Sam to confirm my suspicions, but Lara had moved faster than expected. As the ballroom emptied, I found myself standing with the hotel staff, a pile of abandoned wedding gifts, and 3 very uncomfortable people who'd just learned that actions have consequences. The penthouse address is 1247 Harborview Drive, top floor, I told Henri. Building security is expecting our guests. Lara made one final attempt. You can't just pretend we don't exist. I'm not pretending anything, I said, pocketing the signed guest list. I'm simply choosing who I associate with moving forward. The elevator ride to the parking garage was silent. I'd driven separately to the hotel, planning to leave directly for our honeymoon afterward. Instead, I was heading home to host the most important business party of my career. My phone buzzed with a text from Sam. Saw the news coverage. Brilliant move. Building security briefed and ready. News coverage. Of course. In today's social media environment, Lara's announcement had probably been live tweeted within minutes. By morning, the story would be everywhere. But I'd controlled the narrative. Instead of being the humiliated groom, I was the savvy entrepreneur who turned personal disaster into business opportunity. The guests weren't attending a pity party. They were participating in an exclusive accelerator event. As I drove through downtown Providence toward the Harbor District, I realized this evening was far from over. In fact, it was just beginning. My building's doorman, Carlos, greeted me with professional discretion as I entered the marble lobby of Harborview Towers. The 40-story glass structure housed some of New England's wealthiest residents, but few knew about the unique modifications I'd made to the penthouse level. "Good evening, Mr. Merren. Security briefing complete. We have guest lists and documentation ready for review." "Excellent. How many confirmed arrivals?" 147, sir. First group should arrive within 30 minutes. I took the private elevator to the 42nd floor, using my keycard to access what most people assumed was a standard luxury penthouse. The reality was far more interesting. 2 years ago, I'd purchased not just the penthouse, but the entire 41st floor as well. After removing the floor between them, I'd created a 2-story entertainment and business space that served as headquarters for my tech accelerator program. The upper level featured living quarters and a demonstration area for product launches. The lower level housed conference rooms, a full commercial kitchen, and presentation facilities that could accommodate 200 people. Lara knew about the penthouse apartment. She'd never seen the business facility. The elevator doors opened to reveal floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Providence Harbor, modern furniture arranged for both comfort and networking, and multiple presentation screens already displaying the Merren Accelerator logo. My assistant Jennifer had worked through the weekend preparing for Monday's scheduled investor meeting. Tonight, that preparation would serve a different purpose. My phone rang as I reviewed the evening's arrangements. "Keaton, it's Sam. I'm in the lobby. We need to talk before your guests arrive." Sam Morrison had been my college roommate before becoming a private investigator. His blue-collar background and no-nonsense attitude made him invaluable for situations requiring discretion and practical solutions. "Come up. We have 20 minutes." Sam emerged from the elevator carrying a leather briefcase and wearing his idea of formal attire, clean jeans and a button-down shirt. His weathered face showed the skepticism I'd learned to trust over the years. "This is either brilliant or completely insane," he said, surveying the transformed space. "Probably both. What did you find?" He opened the briefcase, revealing printed emails, financial documents, and surveillance photos. "Your instincts were correct. Lara and Drew have been planning this for months, but it goes deeper than just an affair." I poured 2 glasses of scotch from the bar cart near the windows. "Show me." "They've been working with someone inside your company, someone with access to financial records and client information." Sam spread the documents across the coffee table. The plan was to wait until after the wedding, then use community property laws to claim partial ownership of your accelerator program. The emails were damning. Lara had been corresponding with Drew about securing assets and maximizing position for weeks. But the most interesting discovery was a series of messages between Lara and Maddie discussing timing strategies and public positioning. They coordinated tonight's announcement, I realized. This wasn't spontaneous emotion. It was calculated. "Gets better. Check the financial records." Sam showed me bank statements indicating Drew had been receiving payments from an LLC registered to Maddie's PR firm. The amounts weren't large, but they were consistent, monthly payments dating back 6 months. They've been paying him? Consulting fees, according to the documentation. But look at the timing. The payment started exactly 1 week after Lara and I announced our engagement. Whatever they were planning, it began the moment our relationship became legally significant. There's more. Sam handed me a printed screenshot of text messages. "Sloane's been documenting everything for her social media channels. She's been planning to live stream the wedding drama for her followers." The messages showed Sloane discussing camera angles, hashtag strategies, and maximum viral potential for what she called the wedding scandal of the year. I sat back in my chair, processing the information. So tonight wasn't just about Lara choosing Drew. It was about creating a public spectacle while positioning themselves to claim my business assets. That's my assessment. But here's the thing. By moving the party to your private business facility and requiring signed waivers, you've just documented everyone's acknowledgement that this is your separate property. The implications were significant. In the chaos of the moment, I'd accidentally created the perfect legal framework to protect my assets from any future community property claims. How many people know about the business facility? Based on my research, maybe a dozen. Lara definitely didn't know the scope of what you built here. The elevator chimed, indicating our first guests were arriving. Through the windows, I could see a line of vehicles in the circular driveway below. "What do you want me to do?" Sam asked, gathering the documents. "Circulate, listen, document everything." I straightened my tie and checked my reflection in the hallway mirror. Tonight, we're going to let them show us exactly who they really are. The elevator doors opened to reveal Henri from the hotel, accompanied by the first wave of wedding guests. Their expressions ranged from curious to impressed as they took in the unexpected sophistication of the space. "Welcome to Merren Accelerator," I announced, gesturing toward the registration table Jennifer had prepared. "Please sign in and help yourselves to refreshments. We'll begin presentations in 30 minutes. Margaret Chen, a venture capitalist I'd been trying to connect with for months, approached with obvious interest. "Keaton, I had no idea you'd built something like this. The space is remarkable." "Thank you. I've been keeping it relatively quiet while we establish our portfolio companies." I handed her a business card. "I'd love to schedule a proper presentation next week." As guests continued arriving, I watched the social dynamics unfold. Lara's friends clustered near the elevator, clearly uncomfortable but unwilling to leave what was obviously an exclusive event. Business contacts spread throughout the space, examining the demonstration areas and networking with each other. The most interesting group consisted of people I'd never met. Guests Lara had invited who were now discovering my business facility for the first time. Several approached with investment inquiries, having assumed this was a planned reveal rather than an improvised response to personal drama. Sloane attempted to position herself near the presentation screens, presumably to capture content for her social media channels. I made a mental note to have security monitor her activities. "Excuse me, Mr. Merren?" A young woman I didn't recognize extended her hand. "I'm Rebecca Torres from Providence Business Journal. I was hoping to ask a few questions about your accelerator program." News media. Of course, someone had contacted the press about tonight's events. "I'd be happy to discuss our business initiatives," I replied carefully. "However, tonight is a private networking event." "I understand, but given the unusual circumstances of the announcement, our readers would be very interested in learning about your company's expansion plans." The unusual circumstances. She was referring to Lara's wedding reception announcement, which meant the story was already spreading through local media channels. "Perhaps we could schedule a formal interview next week," I suggested. "Tonight's focus is on connecting with potential partners and investors." As Rebecca moved away, I realized the evening was developing beyond anything I'd originally planned. What started as damage control was becoming a legitimate business opportunity. My phone buzzed with a text message from an unknown number. "Impressive recovery. Would like to discuss investment opportunities. Victoria Ashworth. Victoria Ashworth." I recognized the name from Forbes articles about New England's most successful venture capital firms. She was apparently among tonight's guests, though I hadn't seen her arrive. The elevator chimed again, and I turned to see Lara, Drew, and Maddie step into the lobby area. Building security had clearly allowed them access to the elevator, but the exclusion list would prevent them from entering the main event space. Carlos appeared beside them, politely but firmly blocking their path to the registration table. "I'm sorry, but you're listed as excluded parties for tonight's event," he explained, checking his clipboard. "This is ridiculous," Lara said, her voice carrying across the space. "Half these people are here because of connections I provided." Several guests turned to observe the confrontation. I walked over, maintaining the calm demeanor that had served me well throughout the evening. "Good evening," I said pleasantly. "I hope you're all well." Drew stepped forward, his face flushed with anger or embarrassment. "You can't seriously expect us to stand in the hallway while everyone else enjoys the party." Actually, that's exactly what I expect. I gestured toward the signed documentation on the registration table. Tonight's event requires specific waivers and agreements. Unfortunately, your presence would create conflicts of interest for the business discussions taking place. Maddie tried a different approach. Keaton, we've all been friends for years. Surely we can work something out. Friends? I repeated thoughtfully. That's an interesting word choice considering the documentation my investigator discovered this afternoon. The color drained from Maddie's face. Behind her, I could see Sam photographing their conversation from across the room. I'm not sure what you mean, she said carefully. The consulting payments to Drew, the social media coordination with Sloan, the timing strategies you discussed via email. I smiled politely. Would you like me to be more specific? Lara grabbed my arm. You had us investigated? I had my suspicions confirmed, I corrected, gently removing her hand. The same way you confirmed your feelings for my brother. The elevator area had grown quiet, with nearby guests obviously listening to our exchange. I realized this moment would define how the evening's story was told and retold in social circles. Here's what's going to happen, I announced, speaking loud enough for everyone to hear. You three are going to leave my building. Tonight's event will continue as planned, and tomorrow we'll all begin dealing with the consequences of tonight's choices. Drew made one final attempt at intimidation. You think you can just humiliate us and walk away? I think I can protect my business interests and personal dignity, I replied. Everything else is your choice. Carlos stepped forward. Sir, shall I escort them to the exit? Please. As security guided them toward the elevator, I turned back to my guests with a smile. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your patience. Shall we begin tonight's presentations? The crowd applauded, and I realized the evening had just taken another unexpected turn. The presentation area filled quickly as guests settled into the theater-style seating Jennifer had arranged. What was supposed to be a small investor meeting setup now accommodated nearly 150 people, creating an intimate but professional atmosphere. I took the stage with the same confidence I'd used in countless business pitches, except tonight, the stakes felt entirely different. This wasn't just about funding or partnerships, it was about reclaiming control of my narrative. Welcome to Merren Accelerator, I began, the presentation screen displaying our portfolio companies. Tonight's circumstances are certainly unique, but they've created an opportunity I'd like to share with all of you. The first slide showed our success metrics. 3 companies launched, 2 successful exits, 47 jobs created in the local tech sector. Numbers that spoke louder than personal drama. Over the past 2 years, we've built something special in Providence, a combination of funding, mentorship, and collaborative workspace that's producing real results for entrepreneurs and investors. Margaret Chen raised her hand. What's your typical investment range? We typically invest between $50,000 and $200,000 in early-stage companies, with follow-up rounds available for successful performers. I clicked to the next slide, showing financial projections. Our average return on investment has been 320%. Victoria Ashworth, whom I'd finally spotted in the third row, leaned forward with interest. How many companies are you currently incubating? 8 active companies, with 3 more beginning next month. I gestured toward the demonstration area visible through the glass partition. The facility can accommodate up to 15 companies simultaneously. As I continued the presentation, I noticed Sloan had somehow gained access to the event space. She stood near the back wall, phone in hand, clearly recording everything for her social media channels. Our current portfolio includes a medical device startup that's revolutionizing diabetes monitoring, a software company developing AI solutions for small businesses, and a sustainable packaging firm that's already secured contracts with 3 major retailers. The questions came steadily from the audience. Investment minimums, due diligence processes, timeline expectations. These were serious inquiries from people with real money to invest. "Mr. Merren," called out someone I didn't recognize, "how do you screen potential portfolio companies?" Excellent question. We focus on 3 criteria: market opportunity, team capability, and scalability potential. I clicked to a slide showing our evaluation matrix. But beyond the metrics, we look for entrepreneurs who demonstrate resilience under pressure. The irony wasn't lost on me. Tonight had certainly been a test of resilience under pressure. Rebecca from the Providence Business Journal raised her hand. "Given tonight's personal circumstances, are you concerned about maintaining professional focus?" The room went quiet. This was the question everyone wanted answered, but nobody wanted to ask. "Actually, tonight's events have clarified my priorities remarkably well," I replied. "Personal relationships can be complicated and unpredictable. Business relationships, when properly structured, provide clarity and mutual benefit." I clicked to the final slide, showing contact information and next steps for interested investors. The Accelerator program represents my primary focus moving forward. We're currently raising a $2 million fund to support our next cohort of companies. Tonight's presentations are just the beginning of that conversation. The applause was genuine and enthusiastic. As guests began mingling again, I was approached by a steady stream of people requesting follow-up meetings, business cards, and investment information. Sam appeared beside me as the crowd dispersed toward the refreshment area. "Interesting development," he said quietly. "Sloane's been live streaming parts of the presentation. Her follower count has tripled in the past hour. What's she saying? Positioning herself as providing exclusive access to a major business announcement. She's completely reframed tonight's story." I glanced toward the back of the room where Sloane was now conducting what appeared to be an interview with one of the venture capitalists. "She's trying to rebuild her narrative," I realized. Instead of being part of the wedding drama, she's becoming the influencer who discovered the next big investment opportunity. Smart move on her part, but it creates a problem for Lara and Drew. "How so?" Sam showed me his phone, displaying Sloane's Instagram story. "She's documenting everything as a business event. No mention of personal drama or wedding cancellations. Just exclusive access to Merren Accelerator's investor presentation." The implications were significant. Sloane was essentially erasing the personal context of tonight's events, focusing entirely on the business opportunity. Her followers would see a successful networking event, not a response to relationship betrayal. "That actually works in our favor," I said. "The more tonight gets remembered as a business success, the better." Victoria Ashworth approached, extending a business card. "Keaton, impressive presentation. I'd like to schedule a detailed discussion about investment opportunities." "I'd welcome that conversation. Are you available next week?" "Actually, I'm available now, if you have a few minutes for preliminary questions." We moved to a quieter corner of the space, near the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the harbor. Victoria's reputation in venture capital was formidable. Her firm had backed several companies that became household names. "Your metrics are solid, but I'm more interested in your management philosophy," she said. "Tonight's situation was obviously unexpected. How do you handle crisis management in your portfolio companies?" "The same way I handled tonight. Assess the situation quickly, identify available resources, and execute a plan that protects long-term interests while addressing immediate challenges. And personal relationships with business partners. Clear boundaries, documented agreements, and regular communication." I gestured toward the signed waivers on the registration table. "Everything in writing, everything transparent." Victoria smiled. "You're talking about tonight's guest waivers." "Among other things, when personal and professional relationships overlap, documentation becomes essential." "I assume you learned that lesson recently?" "I'm learning it right now." Our conversation was interrupted by commotion near the elevator. Lara had apparently returned, this time accompanied by her parents and what appeared to be a lawyer. Carlos approached me discreetly. "Sir, they're claiming property rights and demanding access to the apartment level." "Property rights?" Something about community property and shared assets. The gentleman with them says he represents their legal interests. I excused myself from Victoria and walked toward the elevator area, where Lara's father was speaking loudly to building security. "My daughter has legitimate claims to this property," he was saying. "You can't simply exclude her based on personal disputes." The lawyer, a thin man in an expensive suit, stepped forward. "Mr. Merren, I'm David Kellerman representing Ms. Patterson. We need to discuss property access and asset documentation." "Good evening, Mr. Kellerman. I'm not sure what property claims you're referring to." "Your fiancée has been contributing to household expenses and property improvements for the past 18 months. Under Rhode Island law, she may have established property rights." I pulled out my phone and speed-dialed my attorney, Michael Brennan, who'd helped structure the Accelerator program. "Mike, I need you at Harborview Towers immediately. We have a property dispute situation." While waiting for my lawyer, I addressed the group calmly. "Mr. Kellerman, you're welcome to review any documentation you'd like. However, tonight's event is a private business function, and building security has clear instructions about access." "We're not asking to attend your party," Lara said. "We want access to the apartment." "The apartment is part of the business facility. Access requires proper waivers and agreements." David Kellerman consulted his notes. Ms. Patterson was unaware of the business facility's existence. That could constitute asset concealment. The business facility is properly registered with the state, pays appropriate taxes, and maintains all required documentation. There's nothing concealed about it. The elevator chimed, and Michael Brennan emerged, carrying his briefcase and wearing the focused expression that made him one of Providence's most effective attorneys. "Good evening, everyone. Mike Brennan, representing Mr. Merren and Merren Accelerator. What seems to be the issue?" David Kellerman introduced himself and outlined their position. Michael listened carefully, occasionally asking for clarification or documentation. "Interesting theory," Michael said finally. "However, Mr. Merren and Ms. Patterson were never married, which limits community property claims significantly. Additionally, this facility is owned by a business entity, not personally by Mr. Merren." "She contributed to household expenses," David insisted. "For the apartment, perhaps. But the business facility is separate property with separate financing, separate registration, and separate tax documentation." I watched Lara's face as she realized the implications. The penthouse apartment she knew about represented maybe 20% of the actual property value. The business facility, which she'd never seen, comprised the majority of the asset. "Furthermore," Michael continued, "tonight's event documentation shows Ms. Patterson was offered the same access as other guests, subject to the same waivers and agreements. She chose not to participate. She was excluded. She was offered conditional access, the same as everyone else. The conditions related to business conflicts of interest, not personal disputes." Victoria Ashworth appeared beside me. "Excuse me, but is this discussion affecting tonight's business presentations? Several investors are waiting for follow-up conversations." The question was perfectly timed. It reminded everyone present that this was primarily a business event, with legal disputes being a secondary distraction. "Not at all," I replied. "Please encourage everyone to continue networking. This matter should be resolved shortly." David Kellerman conferred quietly with Lara and her parents, clearly realizing their legal position was weaker than expected. "We'll need to review documentation and reassess our options," he said finally. "Of course. My office will provide any public records you'd like to examine." Michael handed him a business card. "However, tonight's business event should be allowed to continue without further interruption." As they retreated to the elevator, Lara made one final attempt at personal appeal. "Keaton, this doesn't have to be so complicated. We can work something out." "Actually, it's remarkably simple," I replied. "You made your choice at the wedding reception. I'm making mine now." The elevator doors closed, and I turned back to find my guests watching with expressions ranging from impressed to entertained. "Ladies and gentlemen," I announced, "thank you for your patience. Shall we continue our discussions?" The applause was even louder this time. By midnight, the networking event had evolved into something unprecedented. What started as damage control had become the most successful business development evening of my career. Investment commitments totaled over $800,000, with several more pending due diligence reviews. Sam found me near the bar, where I was finally allowing myself a moment to process the evening's events. "You need to see this," he said, showing me his tablet. "The story's gone viral." Sloane's Instagram account showed over 50,000 new followers since the evening began. Her live streams from the event had been shared across multiple platforms, generating hundreds of thousands of views, but the narrative had completely shifted from wedding drama to business success story. "Exclusive access to Providence's hottest tech accelerator," read one of her posts. "Behind the scenes, look at how serious money gets invested." The comments were fascinating. Instead of gossip about relationship drama, followers were asking about investment opportunities, startup applications, and networking access. "She's completely rewritten tonight's story," I observed. "Gets better. Check the news coverage." Sam scrolled to a Providence Business Journal article titled, "Local Tech Accelerator Announces Major Expansion." The piece focused entirely on the business announcements, with only a brief mention of unusual circumstances surrounding the event's timing. Rebecca Torres had crafted the story to emphasize investment opportunities and portfolio company successes. The personal drama was relegated to a single paragraph that could easily be overlooked. How did she manage that angle? Professional journalism. She recognized the real story wasn't about your personal life. It was about a significant business development happening in the local tech sector. My phone buzzed with notifications from LinkedIn, Twitter, and several business networking platforms. The accelerator's social media presence had exploded overnight, with connection requests and inquiries flooding in. "This is surreal," I admitted. 6 hours ago I was getting married. Now I'm running the most successful investor relations event in company history. "Sometimes disaster creates opportunity," Sam said. "Question is, what happens tomorrow?" Before I could answer, Jennifer approached with her tablet and a concerned expression. "Keaton, we have a problem. The registration system is overloaded with new inquiries. Over 300 startup applications submitted in the past 4 hours. 300? Apparently, Sloane's followers include a lot of entrepreneurs who saw tonight's streams and want to apply for accelerator programs." I looked around the space, where the last few guests were still engaged in animated conversations. Victoria Ashworth was exchanging contact information with 2 other venture capitalists. Margaret Chen was reviewing portfolio company materials with obvious interest. "Can our systems handle the volume? Not without significant upgrades. We're going to need additional staff, expanded review processes, and probably more physical space." The irony was remarkable. Lara's betrayal had accidentally triggered the kind of business growth I'd been working toward for 2 years. "Set up meetings with our portfolio companies tomorrow. If we're scaling this quickly, we need to ensure current commitments remain solid." "Already scheduled. But Keaton, there's something else." Jennifer showed me her tablet, displaying a series of email messages that had arrived during the evening. "Drew's been contacting our portfolio companies directly. He's claiming the accelerator program is in financial distress due to personal legal issues." The emails were professionally written but clearly designed to create doubt about the accelerator's stability. Drew was essentially trying to sabotage the business relationships I'd been building. "When did these go out?" "Starting about 2 hours ago, right after the legal confrontation in the lobby." Sam leaned over to read the messages. "This could actually constitute business interference, possibly actionable. What kind of responses are we getting?" "Mixed. 2 companies are requesting clarification meetings. One asked about alternative funding sources, but 3 others specifically mentioned tonight's investor event as evidence of strong business momentum." The portfolio companies were essentially choosing sides based on tonight's events. Those who saw the accelerator as stable and growing would stay. Those who had concerns might look elsewhere. Schedule individual meetings with every portfolio company this week. Full transparency about business operations, financial status, and growth plans. Done. But there's more. Jennifer scrolled to another set of messages, these from potential investors who'd learned about the accelerator through social media coverage. We have 12 new investment inquiries, including 3 from venture capital firms that typically don't work with early-stage accelerators. 12? The viral social media coverage created credibility we couldn't have bought with traditional marketing. Sloane's followers include some very serious money. I realized we were experiencing the kind of business momentum that usually takes years to develop. The combination of live social media coverage, legitimate news reporting, and exclusive networking access had created perfect conditions for rapid growth. What's our capacity for new investors? Legally, we can accommodate up to 25 investors in the current fund structure. We have 8 confirmed, 12 pending, and now 12 new inquiries. That's 32 potential investors for 25 spots, which means we can be selective about terms and requirements. The evening's personal disaster was becoming a business advantage in ways I couldn't have imagined. My phone rang with a call from an unknown number. Keaton Merren. Mr. Merren, this is Patricia Vance from New England Venture Partners. I saw coverage of tonight's event and would like to discuss significant investment opportunities. New England Venture Partners managed over $200 million in regional investments. They typically worked with established companies, not early-stage accelerators. I'd welcome that conversation, Ms. Vance. Are you available next week? Actually, I'm available tomorrow morning if your schedule permits. We're very interested in what you've built. After arranging the meeting, I hung up to find Sam and Jennifer watching with amused expressions. Let me guess, Sam said. Another major investor inquiry. New England Venture Partners wants a meeting tomorrow. This is getting ridiculous, Jennifer laughed. At this rate, you're going to be oversubscribed by the end of the week. The last guests were finally departing, many exchanging final business cards and scheduling follow-up meetings. The networking energy had been remarkable, the kind of productive connections that usually required months of relationship building. Victoria Ashworth stopped by our table as she prepared to leave. Keaton, excellent evening. I'll have term sheets ready for review by Thursday. Term sheets? For our investment commitment. After tonight's presentation and the obvious market momentum, we're prepared to move quickly. After she left, I sat back in my chair, trying to process what had just occurred. 6 hours ago, Lara announced she was leaving me for my brother in front of 300 people. And now you have the most successful accelerator program in New England, Sam added. With more investor interest than we can accommodate, Jennifer continued. And a social media presence that's generating national attention, Sam concluded. I looked around the penthouse facility, where staff was beginning to clean up from the evening's events. The space that had been my private business headquarters was now the center of a rapidly expanding enterprise. What happens when Lara and Drew realize what they just walked away from? That, Sam said with a grin, is when things get really interesting. Outside the windows, Providence Harbor reflected the lights of the city, peaceful and constant, despite the chaos of human relationships. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities, and undoubtedly new complications. But tonight had proven something important. Sometimes the worst personal moments create the best professional opportunities. My phone buzzed with one final notification, a text from an unknown number. Saw the coverage. Impressive recovery. Looking forward to watching what you build next. A friend. I showed the message to Sam, who frowned as he read it. Any idea who sent that? None. But something tells me we're going to find out soon enough. The evening was finally ending, but the story was just beginning. I woke up in my penthouse apartment to the sound of construction equipment and the buzz of my phone vibrating against the nightstand. Sunlight streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows, casting long shadows across the hardwood floors. For a moment, I'd forgotten about the previous evening's events, until I saw the stack of business cards on my dresser and the formal suit draped over the chair. The phone showed 47 missed calls, 123 text messages, and over 300 email notifications. The digital avalanche of the modern world responding to last night's unexpected drama. I made coffee and settled at my kitchen table to begin sorting through the chaos. The first priority was distinguishing between legitimate business inquiries and curiosity seekers attracted by the social media coverage. The text messages ranged from congratulatory notes from business contacts to concerned inquiries from family members who'd seen news coverage. But one message stood out, sent at 6:30 in the morning from Lara. "We need to talk. This situation is getting out of hand." I deleted it without responding. The email queue was more complex. Investment inquiries, partnership proposals, interview requests from business publications, and several messages from entrepreneurs hoping to join the Accelerator program. But buried among the legitimate correspondence were more concerning communications. Drew had apparently spent the early morning hours contacting everyone in my professional network, sending messages that painted last night's events as evidence of unstable judgment and poor business management. Keaton's recent behavior raises serious questions about his decision-making capabilities, read one forwarded message. Investors should carefully consider whether his personal issues might affect business performance. I forwarded the messages to Michael Brennan with a note requesting legal review for potential business interference claims. My laptop chimed with a video call from Jennifer, who was apparently already at the office despite the early hour. "Good morning, sunshine. Ready for the circus?" Her background showed the Accelerator's main conference room, where she'd apparently been working since dawn. "How bad is it?" "Depends on your perspective. We have 17 confirmed investor meetings scheduled for this week, 43 startup applications that require serious review, and 3 major media outlets requesting interviews." "And the bad news?" "Drew's been busy. He contacted 8 of our current portfolio companies, 3 major investors, and apparently reached out to the State Business Development Office with concerns about our operational stability." I rubbed my temples, feeling the first hints of a headache developing. "What kind of concerns?" "Claims that last night's event was evidence of erratic behavior and poor judgment. He's suggesting investors should reconsider their commitments based on your personal circumstances." "Any responses?" "Mixed. 2 portfolio companies requested emergency meetings to discuss their concerns, but 6 others specifically mentioned last night's professional presentation as evidence of strong leadership under pressure." The doorbell rang, interrupting our conversation. Through the security monitor, I could see Sam standing in the hallway carrying coffee and what appeared to be several newspapers. "I have to go. Schedule the portfolio company meetings for this afternoon. We'll address their concerns directly." Sam entered carrying a grim expression and a stack of local publications. "You're famous," he announced, spreading newspapers across my kitchen table. The Providence Journal's business section featured a prominent article titled, "Local Entrepreneur Turns Personal Crisis into Business Opportunity." The coverage was generally positive, focusing on the Accelerator's growth potential and investor interest. But the alternative weekly paper had taken a different approach. "Wedding drama becomes tech success story, but questions remain about stability." "The mainstream coverage is good," Sam observed. "Professional focus, business metrics, growth potential. But the gossip publications are having a field day with the personal drama angle." "What are they saying?" "Speculation about your relationship history, questions about Drew's motivations, analysis of Lara's career prospects. The usual celebrity gossip approach, except applied to local business figures." I scanned the articles, noting how different publications had emphasized different aspects of the same events. The business press focused on investment opportunities and company growth. The lifestyle publications emphasized personal relationships and social dynamics. "Any legal concerns?" "Nothing actionable. They're sticking to verifiable facts and clearly labeled speculation, but the coverage is generating significant public interest. My phone rang with a call from Michael Brennan. Good morning, Mike. Interesting evening last night. I've reviewed Drew's messages to your business contacts. Several could constitute tortious interference with business relationships. What are our options? We could send cease and desist letters, but that might escalate the situation unnecessarily. Better approach might be proactive communication with your business partners, addressing concerns directly. Jennifer's scheduling meetings with all portfolio companies this week. Good. Document everything. If Drew continues interfering with specific business relationships, we'll have grounds for legal action. After ending the call, I realized the morning was developing into a complex balancing act, managing legitimate business growth while addressing sabotage attempts and media attention. Sam poured himself coffee and settled into the chair across from me. What's the plan? Focus on business fundamentals, meet with portfolio companies, address investor concerns, and let the results speak for themselves. And Drew? Drew's making himself irrelevant. The more he tries to interfere, the more he demonstrates why cutting ties was the right decision. My laptop chimed with another video call, this time from Victoria Ashworth. Good morning, Keaton. I hope I'm not calling too early. Not at all. How can I help you? I wanted to follow up on last night's discussion before the media attention complicates things further. Are you available for a detailed conversation this morning? Absolutely. What time works for you? I'm actually in your building's lobby. I was hoping we could meet now if your schedule permits. I glanced at Sam, who shrugged with amusement. Of course. I'll have security send you up. Victoria emerged from the elevator 10 minutes later, carrying a leather portfolio and wearing the focused expression of someone accustomed to making significant financial decisions quickly. Impressive facility, she said, surveying the penthouse apartment. Last night's presentation space was remarkable, but seeing the residential integration provides useful context. Context? For understanding how you approach work-life integration. The facility design suggests someone who thinks systematically about long-term objectives. We settled in the living area overlooking the harbor, where morning light created an ideal setting for serious business discussions. I've reviewed your financial documentation and portfolio company performance metrics, Victoria began, opening her portfolio. The numbers are solid, but I'm more interested in discussing scalability potential. What kind of scalability? Regional expansion. Your model could work in other markets, Boston, New York, possibly Atlanta or Austin. But scaling requires different management approaches and significantly more capital. She handed me a preliminary term sheet that made my coffee cup pause halfway to my lips. $5 million? Initial investment, with additional rounds available based on performance milestones. The goal would be establishing Merren Accelerator as a regional platform rather than a local program. The numbers were staggering. $5 million would allow expansion into multiple markets, hiring experienced staff, and developing infrastructure to support hundreds of portfolio companies. What's the timeline? Assuming due diligence proceeds smoothly, we could close within 60 days. But there are conditions. Such as? Management stability. Last night's events demonstrated impressive crisis management skills, but investors need assurance that personal issues won't affect business performance. I realized Victoria was addressing Drew's sabotage attempts indirectly, giving me opportunity to respond to concerns before they became problems. Personal and professional boundaries are clearly established, I replied. Last night's documentation process was specifically designed to maintain those distinctions. The waiver system was brilliant. It created legal clarity while demonstrating business sophistication. Crisis management often requires creative solutions. Victoria smiled. Which brings me to another condition. We'd want you to document last night's decision-making process as a case study for other portfolio companies. The ability to turn personal crisis into business opportunity is exactly the kind of entrepreneurial thinking we want to support. After Victoria left, I sat alone in my apartment, staring at the term sheet that could transform everything I'd built over the past 2 years. Sam returned from walking Victoria to the elevator. $5 million? With potential for additional rounds. That's serious money. That's life-changing money. My phone buzzed with another text from Lara. Drew told me about the investor meetings. We need to discuss this situation before it gets more complicated. I showed the message to Sam, who shook his head with disgust. She's monitoring your business activities through Drew. Which means they're coordinating their approach. Question is, what are they planning? Before I could answer, my phone rang with a call from Jennifer. We have a problem. Drew just showed up at the office demanding access to financial records. He's claiming partnership rights based on family relationships and shared business discussions. Partnership rights? He says you've been discussing business strategies with him for months, and that constitutes an informal partnership agreement. I grabbed my keys and headed for the elevator. I'll be there in 20 minutes. Don't let him access anything without legal representation present. As the elevator descended toward the parking garage, I realized the morning's business successes were about to be complicated by afternoon's family drama. The game was just beginning. The elevator doors opened to reveal chaos in the Merren Accelerator's main conference room. Drew stood at the head of the table, gesturing emphatically while addressing 3 of our portfolio company founders. Jennifer sat nearby with her laptop open, clearly documenting everything being said. The financial instability is obvious, Drew was saying as I entered. Last night's erratic behavior demonstrates poor judgment that could affect all your companies. Good afternoon, everyone, I announced calmly. Drew, I wasn't expecting to see you here. The portfolio company founders, Sarah from the medical device startup, Tom from the AI software company, and Maria from the sustainable packaging firm, looked relieved at my arrival. Keaton, Sarah said, we were hoping to discuss some concerns that have been raised about the accelerator's stability. Of course. However, I should mention that Drew isn't affiliated with Merren Accelerator in any capacity. His presence here is unauthorized. Drew's face flushed with anger. I'm family. I have legitimate concerns about how this business is being managed. You're my estranged brother who's been interfering with business relationships, I corrected. Jennifer, please call security. That won't be necessary, Tom interjected. We'd just like to hear both perspectives and make informed decisions about our partnerships. I gestured toward the conference table. Absolutely. Let's discuss any concerns you have about the accelerator's operations, financial stability, or management approach. For the next hour, we reviewed financial statements, portfolio company performance metrics, and growth projections. The numbers spoke for themselves: consistent returns, successful exits, and expanding investor interest. The metrics are impressive, Maria acknowledged, but we're concerned about the personal drama affecting business relationships. That's exactly why last night's documentation process was important, I replied. Clear boundaries between personal and professional relationships protect everyone's interests. Drew attempted to interject several times, but his lack of specific knowledge about accelerator operations became increasingly obvious. He could make general accusations about instability, but couldn't address specific business concerns. What about the investor commitments? Sarah asked. Are they solid despite recent events? I pulled out Victoria Ashworth's term sheet, placing it on the conference table where everyone could see the investment amounts. $5 million in confirmed funding, with additional rounds available. The investor specifically cited last night's crisis management as evidence of strong leadership capabilities. The room went quiet as the portfolio company founders absorbed the implications. $5 million represented more growth capital than most accelerators secured in their entire existence. Drew stared at the term sheet with obvious shock. $5 million? from New England Venture Partners, one of the region's most respected investment firms. That's impossible. After last night's disaster became this morning's opportunity, I interrupted. The question is whether our portfolio companies want to participate in that growth or pursue alternative arrangements. Sarah spoke first. We'd like to continue our partnership with Merren Accelerator. The growth potential is exactly what we need. Tom and Maria quickly agreed, recognizing that association with a $5 million investment round would benefit their companies significantly. Drew made one final attempt at disruption. You're all making a mistake. Keaton's judgment is compromised by personal issues. This will end badly for everyone. Actually, Maria said, turning a personal crisis into a business opportunity demonstrates exactly the kind of judgment we want in our accelerator partner. Security arrived as the portfolio company founders were leaving, their concerns addressed and partnerships reaffirmed. Sir, the security guard addressed me. Do you want this individual removed from the building? Please escort him out and add him to the restricted access list. As Drew was led toward the elevator, he turned back with a final threat. This isn't over, Keaton. Lara and I won't let you get away with stealing what should be shared assets. There are no shared assets, I replied. There never were. After Drew's departure, Jennifer and I spent the afternoon addressing the remaining business disruptions his interference had created. Email responses to concerned investors, clarification calls with business partners, and documentation of all attempted sabotage for potential legal action. By evening, the situation had stabilized. Investor commitments remained solid, portfolio companies were satisfied with the accelerator's direction, and media coverage continued emphasizing business success rather than personal drama. I was reviewing final preparations for the next day's investor meetings when my phone rang with a call from an unknown number. Keaton Merren. Mr. Merren, this is Detective Patricia Reeves with Providence Police. We need to discuss some allegations that have been made regarding your business activities. My stomach dropped. What kind of allegations? Claims of financial fraud and asset concealment. Can you come to the station this evening for questioning? I'll be there within the hour. Should I bring legal representation? That's your choice, sir. I immediately called Michael Brennan, who agreed to meet me at the police station. Then I called Sam, who was still monitoring Drew and Lara's activities. They've escalated to criminal allegations, I told him. What kind of allegations? Financial fraud and asset concealment. They're trying to frame the accelerator as a criminal enterprise. That's a dangerous game. False accusations to police can backfire quickly. The police station interview lasted 3 hours. Detective Reeves asked detailed questions about the accelerator's formation, funding sources, business operations, and relationship to my personal finances. Michael provided documentation for every inquiry, business registration records, tax filings, investor agreements, and bank statements. The accelerator's legitimacy was thoroughly documented and easily verified. The allegations appear to be unfounded, Detective Reeves concluded. Your business operations are properly documented and legally compliant. What happens to the people who made false accusations? That depends on whether they knowingly provided false information or simply misunderstood the situation. We'll be investigating further. As we left the police station, Michael's expression was grim. False police reports are serious business. If Drew and Lara knowingly made fraudulent accusations, they could face criminal charges themselves. What's our next step? Document everything. If they continue making false claims, we'll have grounds for defamation lawsuits and possibly criminal referrals for filing false reports. I drove home through the quiet streets of Providence, processing the day's events. What had started as relationship drama was escalating into potential criminal accusations and business warfare. But the accelerator remained strong. Investor commitments were solid, portfolio companies were thriving, and growth opportunities were expanding rapidly. My phone buzzed with a text message as I pulled into the building's parking garage. Saw the police station visit on social media. This has gone too far. We need to end this before someone gets hurt. Meet me tomorrow at Harbor Lights Cafe, 2 p.m. Come alone. Lara. I stared at the message, realizing that tomorrow would likely determine how this entire situation resolved. The game was approaching its final moves. I forwarded the message to Sam with a note. Document everything. This ends tomorrow. As the elevator carried me up to the penthouse, I realized that sometimes the best revenge is simply letting people reveal who they really are. Tomorrow, Lara would have that opportunity. The harbor lights sparkled outside my windows as I prepared for what would likely be our final conversation. After everything that had happened, I was curious to hear what she thought we needed to discuss. The meeting would determine whether this story ended with reconciliation or consequences. Based on the past few days, I suspected it would be consequences, but I'd let her make that choice herself.